Josh Harper received a ridiculous $5,000 fine from the HOA for unauthorized renovations, except he hadn't renovated a thing and didn't even own the house. But when he tried to clear up the mistake, Sharon Whitmore, the HOA president, shut him down with cold arrogance, confident that he'd cave like so many others before him. Big mistake. Josh uncovered their fraudulent scheme, rallied the neighborhood, and turned the tables until the scandal exploded in court and the media. But just wait until you hear the shocking twist in this drama and how justice finally won in the end. Josh Harper never saw himself as the kind of guy who got into fights with HOA boards. He wasn't the angry neighbor type, the one who yelled at kids for cutting across his lawn or argued about trash bins left out too long. No, Josh was the opposite. He paid his rent on time, minded his own business, and kept a low profile in his quiet suburban neighborhood. He worked from home, rarely had visitors, and the most disruptive thing he did was occasionally order takeout at odd hours. So when he opened his mailbox one breezy Tuesday afternoon and found an official-looking envelope with urgent, immediate action required stamped across the front, he felt a twinge of unease. He wasn't behind on any bills, didn't owe anyone money. What could possibly be so urgent? Tearing open the envelope, he unfolded the letter inside and read, "Dear Mr. Harper, you have been fined $5,000 for unauthorized renovations, including repainting the house exterior and replacing the front fence. Failure to comply will result in further penalties." Josh blinked, then blinked again. He had to be reading this wrong. Renovations? $5,000? On a house he didn't even own? He flipped the letter over, as if expecting some kind of hidden, "just kidding" message on the back. Nothing. Just the cold, bureaucratic weight of an HOA fine, demanding thousands of dollars for work he never did. He stared at his rental. Same beige paint, same ugly brown fence that had probably been there since the 90s. Nothing had changed. His first thought, this had to be a mistake, some kind of clerical error, maybe a mix-up with another property. No big deal. He'd call the HOA, explain the situation, and they'd clear it up. Simple. At least that's what he thought. He grabbed his phone, dialed the number on the letter, and waited. After an excruciating hold filled with the same tinny piano loop, playing over and over, someone finally picked up. "Homeowners Association office, this is Sharon," a woman's voice said, perfectly balanced between customer service, fake politeness, and raw, unfiltered authority. Josh exhaled. "Hey, this is Josh Harper. I just got a letter about a fine, but there's been a mistake. I rent this house. I didn't renovate anything." Silence. Then a condescending chuckle. "Oh, Mr. Harper," Sharon said, her voice syrupy sweet, like a kindergarten teacher talking to a misbehaving child. "The renovations were made to the property while you were residing there. That makes you responsible." Josh frowned. "That's not how this works. The owner lives in Arizona. I've never even met the guy. If there were renovations, he would have done them, not me." Sharon's tone lost its fake charm, sharpening like a blade. "Well, the fine stands. Pay up or face additional penalties." Josh felt the heat rise in his chest. This wasn't some minor mistake. This wasn't miscommunication. This was blatant extortion. He gritted his teeth. "So let me get this straight. You're fining me, a tenant, for changes I didn't make on a property I don't own, based on what exactly?" A pause. Then a smooth dismissive. "The board has reviewed the matter, Mr. Harper. There's nothing else to discuss." Click. Josh stared at his phone. Oh, so that's how this was going to go? Fine. If they wanted to play games, he'd play too. They had no idea what was coming next. Josh wasn't about to fork over $5,000 for something he had absolutely nothing to do with. If the HOA thought he was just going to roll over and hand them a pile of cash, they were out of their damn minds. Time to dig in. First step, the landlord. Josh fired off a quick but direct email. "Hey, did you approve any renovations on the house? HOA is fining me $5,000 for painting and a new fence." He expected a delay, maybe a few hours, maybe a day. Instead, the reply came within minutes. "What? I haven't changed a thing. The house still looks like it did when you moved in." Josh stared at his screen. His stomach tightened. Okay, so if his landlord didn't order any work, then who the hell did? Something was off. Josh pushed back his chair, grabbed his phone, and stepped outside. He scanned his house. Same dull beige, same old fence with chipped paint, same cracks in the driveway. Nothing had changed. Then, as he turned his head, he saw it. Across the street, 113 Maple Lane, fresh white fence, bright new paint job. The place looked like an HGTV renovation special. Josh's heart slammed against his ribs. No way. He squinted up at the numbers by the front door, then glanced back at his own house. The HOA had fined him for the wrong damn property. He let out a sharp, humorless laugh. This was it. The renovations weren't on his house at all. They were across the street. Someone at the HOA had either screwed up in a colossal, brain-melting way, or they were straight up scamming him. His fingers flew across his phone screen as he snapped undeniable proof. A photo of his untouched house and a zoomed-in shot of 113 Maple Lane, looking shiny and new. He put it all in a neatly worded, but barely restrained, email to the HOA. Attached are photos of my property and the house across the street at 113 Maple Lane, where the actual renovations occurred. Please correct this error and revoke the fine immediately. Case closed, right? Wrong. An email pinged back less than an hour later. Sharon, we do not make clerical errors. The fine is final. Pay within 30 days. Josh's hands tightened into fists. His jaw clenched so hard it ached. This wasn't incompetence. This wasn't some harmless mistake. This was corruption. If they thought he was just going to roll over and take this, they had another thing coming. Josh had dealt with his fair share of bureaucratic headaches before. Bad landlords, rental scams, even a car dealership that tried to sneak extra fees into his contract. But this was a whole new level of corruption. And if the HOA thought they could intimidate him into cutting a check for $5,000 he didn't owe, they were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. He grabbed his laptop and started digging. He spent the next 2 hours going through every possible regulation, HOA bylaw, and city permit requirement he could find. One thing was clear: renovations like painting a house or replacing a fence required formal approval. There had to be paperwork somewhere. That meant one place to go: the county records office. The next morning, he drove across town to the gray, windowless government building that smelled like dust and bureaucracy. The waiting area was half filled with frustrated homeowners, tired-looking contractors, and an elderly woman furiously arguing with a clerk about a zoning dispute. Josh took a deep breath, stepped up to the counter, and slid his ID across. I need documentation for any permits or renovation requests for 109 Maple Lane. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with coffee stains on her cardigan, barely looked up. Reason for the request? Josh folded his arms. HOA is fining me for renovations I didn't do. Just trying to get the facts straight. That got her attention. She sighed, the kind of sigh that said, "Great, another one of these." HOA trouble? She muttered, typing into her computer. Yeah, not the first time. Josh's eyebrows shot up. Not the first time? How often was this happening? The printer beside her rattled to life. A minute later, she slid a stack of papers toward him. Here you go. Official permit records for your address. Josh picked up the documents and scanned the first page. His stomach dropped. Right there, in black and white, was a formal request for exterior renovations. It listed a full repaint and a fence replacement. Exactly what the HOA was fining him for, and in the section labeled Applicant Name, Josh Harper, his name, his address, his signature. But he had never signed this. Josh's pulse hammered. He flipped to the next page, and that's when he saw it. The final approval signature. Sharon freaking Whitmore. His hands clenched around the papers. No way. This wasn't just some clerical mistake. This wasn't an oversight. This was fraud. Someone had forged his name on an official renovation request, likely to pin the cost on him. And not just anyone. The head of the HOA had signed off on it. Josh's breath came slow and steady, but his whole body buzzed with energy. This was deliberate, premeditated. This wasn't about a simple mix-up with addresses. This was a scam. The realization hit him like a freight train. How many other homeowners had they pulled this on? How many people had just paid the fines, assuming they had no choice? How many other documents had they falsified? Josh looked around the records office, suddenly seeing the tired faces, the stacks of paperwork, the quiet frustration of people just trying to fight through the system. He wasn't going to be one of those people. No, he was going to burn this entire scam to the ground. Time to take this to the next level. Josh had assumed this was his fight alone, that he was the unlucky tenant who just happened to get caught in the crosshairs of a corrupt HOA. He was wrong. A simple post in the neighborhood Facebook group changed everything. Josh wasn't even sure why he bothered typing out the post. Maybe it was frustration. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe he just needed to vent before his head exploded from how insanely unfair all of this was. Either way, he pulled up the local neighborhood group on Facebook, the same one where people usually complained about missing Amazon packages or posted blurry photos of raccoons in their backyards. He typed quickly, thumbs moving furiously over his phone screen. Hey, anyone else been hit with bogus fines from the HOA? Long story short, they're trying to charge me $5,000 for renovations I never did. Just wondering if I'm the only one. He hit post, and within minutes, his phone blew up. At first, he thought something was wrong. Notifications flooded in so fast that he could barely keep up. He opened the app and scrolled through the comments. His stomach twisted. He wasn't the only one. OMG, yes. They fined us for excessive lawn decorations because we had a pumpkin on the porch in November. They said my fence was not up to standard and tried to fine me $3,000. After I had it replaced with one they approved. They charged me for repainting my shutters. I never touched them. HOA is a damn mafia. We just paid because we didn't want to fight them. And then came the message that sealed it. They pulled the same scam on us. Fake paperwork, fake fines. We paid just to make them go away. But if you're fighting back, count me in. Josh's breath caught in his chest. This wasn't just him. This wasn't one mistake. The HOA had been running the scam for years. That's when he realized. This wasn't just about getting rid of his fine. This was about bringing the whole damn operation down, and he was going to make sure it happened. Josh knew fighting the HOA wasn't something he could do alone. They had power. They had money. They had years of experience crushing residents under ridiculous rules. But they had also gotten lazy. They'd scammed so many people for so long that they thought they were untouchable. Big mistake. Josh scrolled through his phone and called a lawyer, a tough-as-nails attorney who specialized in real estate and HOA disputes. When Josh explained the situation, there was a long pause. Then the lawyer sighed. You're not the first person to call me about this HOA, he said. And if they forged documents, that's straight-up fraud. Let's go after them. Josh almost laughed. Now we're talking. The cease and desist letter landed on the HOA's desk like a live grenade. The moment Sharon Whitmore and her board of cronies saw the attorney's letterhead, they panicked. Residents who had been ignored for months suddenly got emails back. Clerical errors were being reviewed. Fines that were previously non-negotiable, mysteriously revoked. But it was too late. Because Josh wasn't just fighting back, he was going public. Josh had been prepared for a legal battle, but he hadn't expected what happened next. A local investigative journalist saw the Facebook post. One quick message turned into a phone call. One phone call turned into an interview. And before Josh knew it, the story was all over the news. HOA fraud scandal. Residents speak out against years of corruption. The article exposed everything. The forged renovation documents. The bogus fines. The shady financial dealings. And it spread like wildfire. Homeowners from other neighborhoods started coming forward. They did this to me too. We were too scared to fight them. We lost thousands to their fake fines. The HOA board members scrambled. They locked down their social media. They stopped answering emails. Some even started resigning. But there was no escaping it now, because then came the final blow. A judge issued a court order. The HOA was forced into a full audit. Josh barely contained his grin when he heard the news, because once they started digging, everything unraveled. It turned out Sharon Whitmore and her little HOA gang weren't just scamming people with fake fines. They were embezzling money. Thousands of dollars meant for neighborhood maintenance mysteriously disappeared. Records were doctored. HOA board members were caught moving money into personal accounts. It was over. When the dust settled, the fallout was glorious. Sharon Whitmore, removed from her position, humiliated in front of the entire community. Several HOA board members, facing legal consequences for fraud and financial misconduct. All fraudulent fines revoked. Josh stood outside his house, looking around his neighborhood. For the first time in a long time, the place felt different, lighter, freer. And him? He walked away, not just with his money intact, but with his head held high. He had won. And the HOA? They learned a painful lesson. Never mess with the wrong tenant.